All right, guys, let's dig into one of the most powerful combinations I've seen for fat loss and long-term health, combining the carnivore diet with fasting. I've worked with countless patients over the years, and one thing becomes obvious very quickly. Most diets fail because people can't control hunger, cravings, or energy crashes. That's where this approach really stands out. Carnivore and fasting don't just add up, they multiply each other's benefits in a way that makes weight loss not only faster, but far more sustainable. Now, both approaches on their own can absolutely work. Fasting is a natural tool that humans have used forever. It gives the body a chance to burn stored fat, reset insulin sensitivity, and improve metabolic flexibility. On the other side, carnivore strips the diet down to the essentials, removing the junk, stabilizing blood sugar, and providing nutrient-dense fuel that keeps the body running efficiently. But when you combine them, you're taking away the biggest obstacles that usually cause people to quit. One of the hardest parts of fasting is dealing with hunger and energy dips. That gnawing, constant feeling of needing to eat is what derails people. But when you eat carnivore, that issue disappears for most patients. They're full, satisfied, and steady, no more roller coaster highs and crashes from carbs. That means fasting doesn't feel like punishment. It becomes a tool you can use naturally, almost without effort. And here's the kicker: when fasting feels easier, you actually do it. And when you actually do it, the fat comes off quicker, inflammation drops, and long-term health improves. This isn't just theory. I've watched it happen over and over again. So let's break this down into 6 key reasons why this combination works better than either method alone. When people first try fasting, the biggest complaint I hear is that it feels like a fight against their own body. They wake up hungry, they try to push through, and within a few hours they're tired, irritable, and obsessing about food. That's why most fasting attempts fail. It isn't that fasting doesn't work, it's that the way most people eat makes fasting unbearable. This is where the carnivore diet changes the entire game, and why from day one combining the two feels different. When you cut out carbs, seed oils, and plant irritants, something fundamental shifts in how your body handles energy. Carbohydrates spike blood sugar, and when blood sugar goes up, insulin follows. That roller coaster is what drives hunger signals and cravings. If you've ever eaten a big bowl of pasta or bread and felt stuffed, only to be starving a few hours later, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It isn't lack of willpower, it's basic physiology. The body gets trapped in this loop of chasing quick energy, and fasting in that state feels like torture. Now contrast that with carnivore. On a diet of meat, fish, and animal fats, blood sugar levels stay flat. There are no wild swings, no insulin spikes, and as a result, hunger hormones like ghrelin and leptin begin to stabilize. Patients often tell me within days of starting carnivore, they feel a calmness around food they've never experienced before. They're not constantly checking the clock for the next meal. That stability is exactly what makes fasting windows feel effortless instead of a daily battle. Another major factor is satiety. Protein and fat are the 2 most satiating nutrients we can eat, and carnivore gives them to you in abundance. Unlike carbs, which digest quickly and leave you hungry, a ribeye or a few eggs keep you satisfied for hours. That fullness isn't just in your stomach, it's hormonal. When you're nourished properly, your body isn't screaming at you to eat more. That means extending a fast happens almost automatically. You finish a steak dinner, and instead of grazing 2 hours later, you feel content well into the next day. Seed oils and plant irritants are another hidden problem that carnivore eliminates. These processed oils disrupt satiety signals and promote inflammation, which can make hunger feel more intense and harder to control. Plant compounds like lectins and oxalates irritate the gut, causing bloating, discomfort, and unstable digestion. People often confuse that discomfort for hunger, reaching for snacks just to settle their stomach. When you strip those foods away, digestion calms down, the gut relaxes, and the phantom hunger signals disappear. Patients are surprised at how much quieter their body feels when those irritants are gone. That quietness makes fasting windows stretch longer without you even thinking about it. There's also the mental side. Most people don't realize how much carbs and processed foods affect their mood and energy. That mid-afternoon crash, the brain fog, the irritability, it all ties back to unstable blood sugar. When your brain depends on glucose spikes for fuel, fasting feels like deprivation. But on carnivore, ketones become a steady energy source and the brain loves running on them. Instead of fog and fatigue, you feel sharp and focused. That mental clarity is one of the first things patients notice, and it makes fasting less of a struggle and more of a natural state. I've had patients who could barely make it to lunchtime before without eating, and within a week on carnivore, they're going 16 or 18 hours without effort. Not because they forced themselves, but because their body stopped demanding food on the old schedule. They'll come in and say, I forgot to eat. I just wasn't hungry. That's the difference. Fasting shouldn't feel like white knuckling your way through cravings. It should feel like the body is aligned with the process. When you cut out the foods that drive instability, fasting stops being a fight. Hunger becomes manageable, blood sugar stays steady, and the body finally has the chance to tap into fat stores without resistance. From the very first day, carnivore lays the foundation that makes fasting not just possible, but surprisingly easy. That's why patients who struggled for years suddenly find themselves fasting naturally, not because they're forcing it, but because the body is finally working with them instead of against them. Most people come to me because they want fat loss, but what they really need is metabolic health. You can lose weight in a dozen different ways, but if your metabolism is still broken, the results don't last. What I've seen again and again is that when you take the carnivore diet and combine it with fasting, you don't just lose weight faster, you fix the engine that controls fat storage and energy use. That synergy is what makes the combination so powerful and why the results are so much more consistent than doing either one alone. The first thing that happens when you cut carbs and rely on animal foods is fat adaptation. This is the process of teaching your body to use fat, both from your diet and from your own reserves, as the main fuel source. For most people eating the standard diet, they're stuck burning glucose. That means when glucose runs out, they crash. But on carnivore, once carbs are removed, the body has no choice but to switch to fat and ketones for energy. That transition alone stabilizes energy, reduces hunger, and sets the stage for sustainable fat loss. Now, layer fasting on top of that. When you go without food, insulin naturally drops and the body is signaled to access stored fat. If you're still eating a carb-heavy diet, fasting can feel like dragging your body through mud, low blood sugar, irritability, fatigue. But if you've already primed the system with carnivore, the transition into fat burning mode is seamless. The body doesn't panic when food isn't coming because it's already efficient at mobilizing fat for fuel. That's where the synergy really shows itself. Fasting accelerates fat burning, and carnivore makes it painless. Reducing insulin resistance is another key part of this equation. High insulin keeps fat locked away, makes weight loss harder, and drives chronic disease. Fasting is well known to drop insulin levels, but if you break your fast with carbs, you undo much of that progress. Carnivore fixes this by keeping insulin low even during eating windows. Every meal reinforces the state of low insulin, steady blood sugar, and fat metabolism. Over time, this combination gives the pancreas a real break, restores insulin sensitivity, and makes the body more responsive to its own hormones. Patients often notice their fasting glucose and insulin markers improve dramatically within weeks, something that neither strategy on its own usually delivers so quickly. Another layer here is how the combination promotes steady fat burning. On carnivore alone, people often experience less hunger and a natural reduction in meal frequency. On fasting alone, people force longer gaps between meals, but often struggle with rebound eating when the fast ends. Together, the weaknesses of each approach are eliminated. Carnivore makes it easy to extend fasting windows without cravings, and fasting gives the body longer uninterrupted periods to mobilize fat stores. The result is a smooth, continuous process of fat burning that doesn't stall out the way many diets do. The changes go beyond body fat. Many patients who combine carnivore with fasting report lower blood pressure, better triglycerides, improved HDL, and significant reductions in markers of inflammation. That tells me the metabolic machinery is repairing itself, the liver is clearing fat, insulin sensitivity is returning, and the whole system is running cleaner. This isn't just about looking leaner, it's about reversing years of damage from poor diets and constant snacking. One of the most striking things I see in practice is how quickly the body responds. People who have been stuck for years, losing and regaining the same weight, suddenly start making consistent progress. They're burning fat day after day, but without the exhaustion or deprivation they used to feel. They describe it as finally stepping off the roller coaster. That's the real sign of metabolic healing. The body stops fighting and starts cooperating. So when you look at fasting and carnivore individually, they're both strong tools. But when you put them together, the effect is amplified. Fat adaptation happens faster, insulin resistance reverses more effectively, and the body transitions into steady fat burning that doesn't depend on constant effort or willpower. That synergy is why patients don't just lose weight, they regain control of their metabolism, and with that, the ability to keep the weight off for good. When most people try fasting, the number one roadblock they run into isn't discipline or motivation, it's hunger. The constant gnawing in the stomach, the cravings for snacks, and the sudden drop in energy make fasting feel like a punishment. You can white knuckle it for a few days, but sooner or later, most people give in. The body always wins when hunger hormones are out of control. That's why pairing fasting with carnivore is such a breakthrough. Carnivore doesn't just reduce hunger a little, it crushes the very signals that drive cravings, and energy crashes. So fasting becomes steady, controlled, far easier than people expect. Cravings are one of the most misunderstood parts of the diet equation. People think they're purely mental, like a lack of willpower, but they're biological. When you eat carbs, blood sugar rises quickly and insulin comes in to bring it back down. The crash that follows makes your body think it needs more food, even if you ate a large meal not long before. That cycle of spike and crash is what keeps people snacking all day long. On carnivore, that cycle is broken. Blood sugar levels stabilize, insulin remains low and steady, and the cravings that used to feel overwhelming just don't show up anymore. Patients often describe it as the noise in my head around food went silent. Satiety is another piece that makes carnivore such a powerful partner to fasting. Protein and fat, which make up the foundation of a carnivore diet, are the most satiating macronutrients we have. They switch on hormones like peptide YY and CCK that tell the brain you're satisfied. Instead of eating and still looking for something sweet or crunchy, you eat a steak or some eggs and you're done. You're full in a way that lingers for hours. That deep satiety is what allows people to glide into a fasting window without feeling deprived. It's not about fighting hunger, it's about eliminating it before it even starts. Then there's energy. Most people trying to fast on a standard diet are running on sugar as their primary fuel. That means energy levels swing up and down with every meal and snack. Skip a meal and the body panics because the glucose supply is gone. That's when you get the dreaded hangry state, shaky hands, brain fog, irritability. On carnivore, your body learns to use fat and ketones as its main fuel. Fat is stable, abundant, and doesn't run out in a few hours the way glucose does. That's why patients on carnivore often say they feel a smooth, consistent energy all day long. When they begin fasting, their bodies simply continue tapping into fat stores, no panic, no crash. It's also worth pointing out that many cravings aren't even about calories, they're about deficiencies. Processed food is calorie dense but nutrient poor, so the body keeps sending out hunger signals to search for missing nutrients. Carnivore solves this by supplying bioavailable protein, essential fats, vitamins, and minerals in their most absorbable forms. When the body is nourished properly, those false hunger signals shut off. You're not reaching for snacks because your body isn't missing anything. That's another reason fasting becomes so much easier. Your system is content not desperately signaling for fuel. The mental clarity that comes with this shift is something patients notice quickly. Without the roller coaster of highs and lows, they describe a calm focus that carries them through the day. Instead of obsessing about their next meal, they get work done, they train, they live their life. That shift in focus is critical for extended fasts. When your brain is running on ketones and steady fat energy, you don't feel like you're struggling, you feel like you're thriving. I've had patients who used to keep snacks in their desk drawer, their car, even their nightstand, because they couldn't go more than a couple hours without eating. Once they switched to carnivore and began layering and fasting, those habits vanished. They'd look back and say, I can't believe how much time and energy I used to waste thinking about food. That transformation isn't just physical, it's mental freedom. So when people ask me why carnivore makes fasting so much easier, the answer is simple. It removes the obstacles. Hunger is controlled, cravings are silenced, and energy is steady. Instead of fighting through a fast, you just live your day, and the fasting window takes care of itself. That's the difference between struggling with fasting and actually succeeding with it. And that's why this combination works where so many others fail. One of the most convincing parts of this approach isn't just the science, it's what I see in the real world. Data is great, but when you watch people's lives change right in front of you, that's when you know something works. Over the years, I've seen patients from all walks of life use carnivore plus fasting to lose weight, heal chronic issues, and reclaim their energy. These aren't just isolated stories. The pattern repeats itself across age groups, health conditions, and backgrounds. That consistency tells me we're looking at a solution that goes deeper than just another diet trend. One patient that comes to mind was a middle-aged man who came in frustrated after trying every mainstream diet. He was overweight, pre-diabetic, and his labs showed elevated triglycerides and poor liver enzymes. Fasting alone had helped him drop a few pounds, but he always regained them. When he switched to carnivore and began pairing it with fasting, the weight started coming off at a steady pace, not in fits and starts. 6 months later, his blood sugar was back in the normal range. His liver enzymes had improved dramatically, and he told me he felt better at 50 than he did at 30. That wasn't just fat loss, that was a metabolic reset. Then there was a woman in her early 40s who had struggled with autoimmune issues for years, joint pain, brain fog, unpredictable flare-ups. She had tried medications, elimination diets, and supplements with little relief. On carnivore alone, her symptoms improved, but she was still carrying extra weight and dealing with energy crashes. When she layered in intermittent fasting, everything clicked. Her inflammation markers dropped, her joint pain calmed, and she finally lost the stubborn weight that had resisted other diets. For her, the combination wasn't just about looking better, it was about getting her life back. I've also worked with younger patients who were athletes or simply trying to improve performance. One young man in his 20s came to me after struggling with energy swings and bloating from a high-carb diet. He wanted to fast for mental clarity, but couldn't make it past a few hours without feeling drained. Once he transitioned to carnivore, fasting became natural for him. He ended up using 1 meal a day as his routine, and his training performance actually went up. His digestion smoothed out, his body composition improved, and he described a sense of focus that carried over into his studies and work. For him, the benefit wasn't just health, it was productivity and performance. Another common story I hear is from people dealing with stubborn weight that just won't move no matter what they try. One woman had been stuck at the same weight plateau for years. She had counted calories, tried plant-based diets, even did extended fasts, but nothing made a lasting difference. On carnivore plus fasting, the plateau finally broke. The difference was that she wasn't fighting hunger or rebounding after every fast. Instead, her body shifted into steady fat burning, and she began losing inches and pounds consistently. She said it was the first time she felt like her body was working with her, not against her. What stands out across these stories is that it doesn't matter whether someone is male or female, young or old, overweight, or already relatively fit. The combination produces results because it addresses root issues: unstable blood sugar, insulin resistance, inflammation, and poor satiety. When those are corrected, fat loss follows naturally, energy stabilizes, and other health conditions often improve as a side effect. I also see this echoed in the broader carnivore and fasting community. People share their experiences online, and the stories are remarkably consistent: dramatic weight loss, improved lab numbers, better digestion, relief from autoimmune flares, sharper mental clarity. Many say they tried countless approaches before, but nothing gave them both the results and the sustainability of this combination. It's not just about dropping a few pounds quickly, it's about long-term transformation. These real world results matter because they cut through theory. You can argue studies and mechanisms all day, but when patient after patient reports the same improvements: fat loss, better labs, less pain, more energy, it becomes hard to ignore. That's why I tell people this isn't just another experiment. It's a strategy that consistently delivers regardless of background or starting point. When you see that kind of repeatable success in the clinic and in the community, you know you've found something powerful. One of the biggest reasons diets fail isn't because people don't want to succeed, it's because the diet is too complicated to live with. Counting calories, prepping 6 small meals a day, weighing food, logging every bite, that becomes exhausting, especially if you're busy with work, family, or travel. People can white knuckle that for a few weeks, but long term it breaks down. What I've seen with patients who combine carnivore with fasting is the opposite. Life gets simpler. Eating becomes something that fits naturally into the day rather than something that requires constant management. That's why the combination works for sustainability. It's not only effective, it's livable. The first way this works is through meal frequency. On a standard diet, people often feel like they have to eat every 2 to 3 hours just to keep their energy up. That creates a schedule that revolves around food, which is hard to maintain. On carnivore, satiety is so strong that most patients naturally reduce to 2 meals a day, sometimes even 1. Pair that with fasting, and suddenly your eating schedule is condensed, predictable, and easy to manage. Instead of thinking about breakfast, snacks, lunch, more snacks, and dinner, you're looking at 1 or 2 solid meals that actually keep you satisfied. That shift alone reduces stress around food in a massive way. Decision fatigue is another huge piece. Modern diets overwhelm people with constant choices. Should I eat this or that? Is this too many carbs? Do I have enough protein? Should I track this in an app? Every choice drains mental energy. Carnivore wipes that away. The food list is simple: meat, eggs, fish, maybe some dairy if tolerated. There's no debate, no label checking, no worrying about hidden sugars or seed oils. Add fasting, and you've reduced not only what you eat, but how often you eat it. Patients often tell me it feels like freedom because food is no longer a source of stress. It's just straightforward fuel. Busy lifestyles benefit enormously from this simplicity. I've worked with professionals who spend long days at the office, parents who juggle kids' schedules, and people who travel constantly. For them, eating 6 perfectly portioned meals a day is impossible, but 1 or 2 carnivore meals, that's manageable anywhere. A steak, some eggs, a burger without the bun, these are easy to find and quick to prepare. With fasting, they often realize they don't need to pack food just in case or stop for snacks. They can get through meetings, flights, or long shifts without worrying about crashing energy. That flexibility makes the lifestyle sustainable in the real world. Another area where patients find relief is meal prep. On traditional diets, people spend hours planning shopping and prepping complicated meals. With carnivore and fasting, meal prep shrinks to almost nothing. Buy some meat, cook it, eat it. There's no long grocery list, no elaborate recipes, no trying to balance macros with special ingredients. That simplicity saves time and reduces stress, which makes it much easier to stick with long term. People often underestimate how much mental bandwidth constant food prep consumes until they experience the opposite. Calorie counting is another burden that disappears with this approach. When people eat carnivore, they're eating foods that naturally regulate appetite. Protein and fat are self-limiting. You eat until you're satisfied and then you stop. Combine that with fasting, and overall calorie intake falls into a healthy range without needing to track numbers. Patients are often shocked when they realize they're losing weight steadily without logging a single calorie. That's a huge psychological shift because they stop seeing food as math and start seeing it as nourishment. The sustainability also comes from how this lifestyle feels. People aren't dragging themselves through the day hungry or obsessing over their next snack. They feel stable, clear-headed, and satisfied. That's what allows them to keep going for months and years, not just weeks. When something feels effortless, you don't need motivation to keep doing it. It just becomes part of your routine. I've watched patients who struggled with diet after diet finally find peace with this combination. They're not chained to a food scale or an app. They're not constantly hungry, and they're not overwhelmed by choices. They eat when it fits their schedule. They enjoy simple meals, and they move on with their lives. That kind of sustainability is rare in the nutrition world, but it's exactly what carnivore and fasting deliver together. By simplifying eating schedules, eliminating decision fatigue, and fitting naturally into real-world routines, this approach gives people the one thing they need most for long-term success, a lifestyle they can actually live with. Most diets can get you some quick results. Cut calories hard, restrict certain foods, exercise more, and the scale will usually move for a while. The problem is that those results rarely last. People regain the weight, often with interest, because the diet was built on restriction and short-term willpower instead of fixing the underlying problems. What sets carnivore plus fasting apart is that it doesn't just deliver fast fat loss, it creates the conditions for long-term success. Patients who stick with it aren't just lighter after a few months, they're healthier, more metabolically flexible, and able to stay consistent without feeling like they're constantly on a diet. One of the biggest reasons this combination works long term is consistency. Most people fail diets because they can't maintain them day after day. They either feel deprived, hungry, or mentally exhausted from managing every detail. Carnivore plus fasting simplifies all of that. By stabilizing appetite and eliminating cravings, people can follow this approach without the ups and downs that normally lead to burnout. Fasting windows become second nature. Meals are straightforward, and the process doesn't feel like punishment. That consistency is what builds momentum. When you can stick to something easily, you're far more likely to keep doing it year after year. Another piece of the puzzle is metabolic flexibility. On the standard high carb diet, people's bodies are locked into running on glucose. That means if they miss a meal, they feel weak, irritable, and foggy because they can't switch to burning fat efficiently. This lack of flexibility makes fasting miserable and ensures people stay dependent on constant feeding. Carnivore shifts the body toward fat adaptation, training it to use fat and ketones as reliable energy sources. Add fasting, and that adaptation accelerates. Over time, the body becomes highly flexible. It can burn fat when food isn't coming in, then switch seamlessly when you eat. That flexibility is a marker of true metabolic health, and it's the reason people stop regaining weight as soon as they leave a calorie-restricted plan. Long-term adherence also depends on how livable a diet is. If something feels like suffering, people quit. If it feels natural, they keep going. With carnivore plus fasting, people aren't hungry all the time. They don't have to count calories or track every detail, and they don't feel deprived because they're eating satisfying, nutrient-dense food. They can go out to dinner and order a steak, travel without worrying about food access, and skip meals without panic. That ease of integration into daily life is what keeps people from rebounding. It's not a diet you go on and off. It becomes the default way of eating. I've seen this in patient after patient. They come in with years of yo-yo dieting behind them, skeptical that anything will work. After a few weeks of carnivore plus fasting, they not only lose weight, but they feel better in ways they didn't expect. Their energy stabilizes, their digestion improves, their mental clarity sharpens. These benefits reinforce the habit. They're not just chasing a number on the scale, they're experiencing daily wins that make the lifestyle worth keeping. That reinforcement is powerful because it turns adherence from a matter of discipline into something people genuinely want to do. It's also important to note that long-term success isn't just about weight. Many patients report dramatic improvements in lab work after months on this combination. Lower fasting glucose, reduced triglycerides, improved HDL, lower inflammation markers. These are objective signs of better metabolic health. When people see those results, they're motivated to continue because it's not just about looking different in the mirror. It's about knowing their health is truly improving. Quick fixes don't deliver that kind of systemic change. The sustainability also comes from the fact that this approach removes the biggest obstacles people face: hunger, cravings, energy crashes, and complexity. When those barriers are gone, people can keep going almost effortlessly. It doesn't rely on a short burst of motivation. It relies on physiology working in your favor. When the body is functioning properly, fat loss and health maintenance don't feel like uphill battles anymore. So while many diets fizzle out once the initial excitement wears off, carnivore plus fasting builds a foundation for long-term results. It improves consistency by making the plan easy to follow, enhances metabolic flexibility so the body isn't trapped in glucose dependence, and supports adherence by fitting naturally into real life. It's not a fad because it doesn't demand constant struggle or gimmicks. It aligns with how the body was designed to operate. That's why years down the line, patients aren't just lighter, they're healthier, more energetic, and still following the same principles that got them results in the first place. This isn't about a quick fix, it's about finally finding a path that lasts.